Disneyland Records, it was actually the most successful record called The Chilling Thrilling Sounds of the Haunted House. You guys remember that one? Here, hold on. Remember this? This is how the sound effects side would open. And it's interesting, that record was actually the easiest record Disneyland Records ever produced because it was just library stuff. They basically pulled stuff from the Disney library and wrote a framework around it, and they hired a narrator. Actually, they didn't even hire a narrator. She was there on another project. And this is great stuff. That's better than Wilhelm, I tell you. Now this is very important. Listen to that guy. Okay. Now, as a kid, again, listening to things on TV, like watching the Mickey Mouse Club, I was a huge Disney nerd. And watching the cartoons and recording all this stuff, and I'd hear it over and over. And there was one cartoon, a Disney cartoon called Lonesome Ghosts. And I was listening to that, and I suddenly had this wonderful revelation listening to it again. Let me play you a little bit of the opening of Lonesome Ghosts. Now listen carefully, keeping that last cue in mind. Like, zoom in on the haunted house with the shutters. Stroke of midnight and the ghosts appear. War of the Worlds, the great George Powell film back in the 50s. Phenomenal sound effects designed by a fellow named Gene Garvin. And there were actually a few articles I could find about that. And then later when I grew up, I was able to go to Paramount and pull some of these elements, and that was just an amazing. Here, this is a composite battle from War of the Worlds. And these are all original, the Martian firing. That sound in particular, the firing, I was like, how was that made? I found it isolated. Anyone want to take a guess how that was made?
Synthesizer.
A little early for synthesizers. Yeah, you think it sounds electronic, it sounds wonderfully electronic, but it's not. The mind boggles, what could they have made that out of? You know what it is? It's a guitar, it's an electric guitar. And I'll play you some of the, we were able to track down some of the elements for that. It's like the steel guitar, like those Hawaiian guitars with the sliders. And they did all these different chords, and here is some of the original elements that they used. And then editorially, they would chop it up and put it, make it really fast. So it's just, plucking them and so you do dozens of those, and then you cut it up. Yeah, and then it's just a matter of editing to get it like that. It's just incredible. And they did use some electronic stuff, but it's almost all based on feedback, where they would, electronic meaning just like reverberation and feedback. They would run these guitar chords and things like that and just take little pieces of them and play them backwards and then do reverberant things. And there were so many great classic sounds in that film. This is just feedback. This is just sped up guitar strumming with a lot of feedback. Yeah, it's so snake-like. It's so wonderful. And this is another great. And then one of the great classic sounds that has been reused a few very, very, very obvious times was their blasts that they did, which was it's like what Bert did in Star Wars. He emulated it. It's a guy wire twang, but with a lot of reverb and a lot of other things and slowed down. Which of course got borrowed by Star Trek for the photon torpedo, but it was originally made for War of the Worlds by Gene Garvin. Anyway, so this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be putting into the museum. All this research. Actually my shrink said I should do it to get it out of my head and get it. huge hero of mine is Jimmy McDonald, who was the Disney sound effects guy for many, many years. And he was actually the voice of Mickey Mouse once Walt retired the voice. And he came up with this way of making sound effects sheet music. He would have like 2 or 3 guys do this performance thing, and they would count down. It would be like a musical performance, but it was silly sound effects. And here, let me play a cue. This is an actual session from Disney. You're going to hear one of the guys, with the baton counting it down. And then they do this wonderful piece. It's about 3 or 4 guys. And then, could we have another one? Yeah, it's just hilarious. Here, let me play it for you. Here you go. And it is different. It's Ben Bert was one of our first rock stars of the field, where you actually knew the name of the sound effects guy. Amazing. That it never happens. One of the signature sounds that he made was the TIE fighters. And it's such a distinctive sound. We all know it. Have you seen the films? And it's such a great sound. And he told me how it was made, and I was able to track down the element that he made it from. He found this elephant recording. Isn't that amazing? It's almost out of the box. This one's the keeper. Hold on. This is the one. That's it. Whoops. And then you double it up and you make it longer and you add things like a little bit of a jet roar. And one of the things he liked to do was put wet freeway traffic under these things to give them a little bit more texture, and it works really well. And a bit of reverb, and you've got a TIE fighter. The cartoon effects libraries like Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers, Disney, like I said, there was this language. They all derived, they needed the same sorts of sounds, and they all came up with their own versions of them. But if you listen to the cartoons or just the sounds, you could identify which studio it was. For example, like, prop plane buys, which is a classic, fast character zooming by, like Roadrunner or, any of these characters just zooming by really quick. Each studio had their own one. Warner Brothers sounded like this. And Disney's sounded like this. So, and I started learning all these, and it was just fascinating. Like Hanna-Barbera had their own tire skid that we all know, and Disney had theirs. If you've got ideas, you want to be a part of this thing, it's going to be going. It's a slow burn. It's going to take a year or so. But thank you very much. Thank you very much.